today. We're here today to raise awareness of the fact that on Tuesday, from Tuesday to Thursday in Glasgow, the Underwater Defence Technology Conference is taking place. A euphemism in my term for an arms fair. It's not really about defence, is it really? It's rather about offence, and we find it very offensive. This, unfortunately, has been sponsored by Glasgow Life through Glasgow City Council. So we would ask you to contact the relevant people in the council to protest this event. There will be delegates from 42 countries meeting with over 50 arms companies, some of the biggest arms companies in the world. We'll be here in Glasgow from Tuesday to Thursday next week. It's an arms fair. It's here to do business. It's not for fun. It's here to do business. So we're here to ask you to join us to protest this event, especially from Tuesday to Thursday next week. We're meeting early on Tuesday at 8 a.m. to welcome the arms dealers to the arms fair. Apart from Glasgow County Council as sponsors of this event, other sponsors include BAE Systems, one of the biggest arms companies in the world, which has 5 facilities in Scotland and produce Eurofighter jets being used by Saudi forces in Yemen. Leonardo, another company, is one of the biggest producers of the Eurofighter Tycoons with a factory in Edinburgh. They make parts for Turkish jets which attack Kurdish territories, for example in Afrin recently earlier this year. Leonardo, incidentally, was given $6 million of a grant by the Scottish Government. This is just to raise awareness that despite the dialogue that we're against arms, that we're for peace and we're against Trident, this is what is actually happening.
I'm from the Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign. The weapons, components and technology made by arms companies, as we know, devastate and terrorise millions of people around the world. But there's something special about the Palestinian people. They provide, and this is from the arms companies' perspective as well, they provide these companies the opportunity to test and showcase their products. Israeli arms companies market their weapons as tested in combat or field tested, meaning that they're being tested on Palestinian bodies and then exported to promote oppression around the world. We know that, and we know there's a two-way arms trade. Not only do we import Israeli technology, surveillance, components, parts, weapons and bombs, but also we export to Israel parts for the Apache helicopter, for the bulldozer that's demolishing Palestinian homes. So there's a two-way arms embargo there. But we do know from the Israeli army themselves, from the Israeli government and those people who, the arms companies, who profit from their sales, is that they do test these weapons on Palestinians. So whether they're rubber bullets, whether they're butterflies, so these names for these weapons is just unbelievable, whether they're butterfly bullets that we've seen tested in Gaza recently, where they have been, the snipers have deliberately targeted, especially young men, in their legs, causing huge numbers of Palestinians losing their limbs. And these are bullets that will explode on impact. And Human Rights Watch and other organizations have come out speaking about this. Sponge bullets, skunk water, tear gas, automatic weapons, drones, surveillance and biometric technology, surveillance systems that have been used in Palestine. One of those companies, Nice Systems, now is installed in Glasgow City Council. They have a contract with the council, and all the CCTVs here are run by Nice Systems, an Israeli surveillance technology company that has tested their technology on Palestinians. Bombs, bomblets, I can go on, helicopter gunships, targeting systems, military-grade bulldozers, showcasing, and this is what we're going to see next week, arms that have been used, that will be showcased to the world's governments. And they are used, Palestinians are the bodies that are used to test these weapons and then promoted to countries around the world to control population, to surveil, to bomb, to kill and devastate and terrorize populations around the world. So, as another speaker has already said, it is disgusting that these companies are allowed to be in Glasgow to showcase these weapons. And it's a disgrace that Glasgow City Council is supporting this arms fair. We've set up a facility with Palestinian partners, civil society organisations that know about these arms fair and know that we are protesting their presence in our city. We've set up a letter writing facility to Susan Aitken. We know that over just the past few days, over 1,500 letters have gone to Susan Aitken using that facility. But I tell you what, not a single reply has been sent from Susan Aitken or her office. Even a template cut and paste reply has been sent to anybody that has used that facility to send the letter. I just want to finally just again echo what somebody else has said. At the end of the day, these councillors are elected politicians. Some, yes, will agree with us, but once in office, it's up to us to make them move. And it's up to us to put pressure on them and to make sure that they don't support these arms fair, that they withdraw, and there's still time to do it. So even if you can't come on Tuesday, get in touch with people who can, whether they're retired, the students, people who have the day off. Please help us put the word out. We'll be there on Tuesday. There'll be things happening on Wednesday and Thursday as well, but we want a mass mobilisation at the SEC on Tuesday. So please help us share on social media, through snail mail, through text, through phone calls. Everything makes a big difference for Tuesday. Thanks very much.
Very happy to speak here today. Very unhappy that I have to speak here today. And again, very disappointed basically in our present council regime. We had promises from this council regime when they came into power that they would change and not make the same mistakes as the previous regime. Unfortunately, they have done nothing to change that. They have not attempted to change that. And in fact, our pension schemes, if you're a local government employee, is still invested in unethical trades and ethical firms and in the arms trade. It is actually quite surprising that Glasgow Life basically has taken this action, although, again, it hasn't stopped them or prevented them making new proposals to cut their employees' terms and conditions once again. It hasn't stopped them increasing the prices, including charging £3 for old age pensioners to swim in their pools. So this hasn't stopped it either. So I'd be really interested to find out basically how this is being proposed. I have made contact with members of the SNP Council, and at this point in time I've had no response. That in itself is disappointing. That in itself shows me quite clearly that the same old mistakes that were made before are now being made again. The Council basically is accountable in investments. The Council is also accountable for the money that invests in parts of services within the Council. Glasgow Life is a charitable status organisation, and I think it's an absolute disgrace that a charitable organisation is using the filth of the earth, and I make no apologies for saying that. The arms trade are the filth of the earth. They ply their trade on death and destruction, and we should not be investing in this. I'm also quite surprised that Elaine Crawford, the Conventions Bureau, stated that Glasgow over the last 500 conferences has made 130 million. Well, I for one are going to be asking for a freedom of information request to find out how much of that has actually been invested in Glasgow services, and I don't expect there'll be a lot, to be quite honest.
I think I'm speaking for everyone here today when I say that we all feel that little bit safer having these kind of people in our city, and the knowledge that these good people are out there somewhere in the world, spanning the globe in fact, embracing and encouraging world peace, open borders, and generally spreading the love across the civilized world. And here in this fair green place, I am sure we are all filled with what can only be described as civic pride, that they have been facilitated so generously, so graciously by our own Glasgow City Council. It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? But in all deadly seriousness, in any if any, facet of this rotten capitalist system exposes in all its gory glory the fact that it is a system dripping with blood from head to foot. It is the arms trade. This filthy, barbaric trade dedicated only to death and destruction sums up the insanity and the systematic inhumanity of capitalism. A system that requires states to be armed to the teeth to compete in making their national capital competitive in world markets. A system that breeds militarism as surely as it breeds the poverty that leads young men and women to become consumed by that militarism, sacrificed over and over and over again on the altar of profit. Fighting and dying, killing and being dehumanized by a system that they have no stake in, for countries that treat them as no more than ordnance. Of course, in the Undersea Defence Technology Fair, all of this is completely hidden. All of the horror, the pain and the terror of war cannot be seen behind the concrete and the glass, where everything is sanitized, everything is civilized, and everyone will be pristine. Those at the fair, the buyers, the sellers, the military bigwigs, their academic apologists, and I apologize for those people, the politicians and their hangers-on will look at us, the protesters, the demonstrators, and they will dismiss us. Indeed, they will not even comprehend us, because they see the world in a different way, because their world is different to ours. In their world, they are not monsters. Indeed, they are the people, the very people who keep us safe from the monsters. They are providing our defense against the threats to our way of life. And when I say our, I mean theirs. Because in the final analysis, all their guns are trained on us. All their wars are against us. And that is why we must be against all of their wars. And we know that this will require mass mobilizations, coordinated civil disobedience, and as the last speaker said, direct action. To even slow down the war machine, never mind to actually bring it to a halt. It will require imagination, organization, and a unity of purpose between all those who share a common aim. But as much as we need to make life hard for these people, wherever they rear their heads, wherever they appear, whatever they are selling, as much as we need to pressurize government, local and national, to some form of non-cooperation, we should remember that war is the health of the state, whether it is preparing for it, prosecuting it, or profiting from it. It is not enough to impress upon the dealers of death our moral outrage. They do not care. We must declare war against war and the global descent into barbarism which is represented in war. And we must organize like we mean it. Finally, we must strike at the very foundations of the system that gives birth to militarism. To paraphrase Glasgow's own John Maclean, who in the dock in 1916 for opposing the First World War said, "We must be out for an absolute reconstruction of society on a cooperative basis throughout all the world. When we stop the need for armies and navies, we stop the need for wars." I'll see you on Tuesday. Thank you very much.
Friends of peace, what we're going to see on the 26th to the 28th of this month, on Tuesday at 10 o'clock onwards, is a carnival of death. It will be a trident festival of death. It will be the merchants of death dressed in suits, pretending that they are civilized, and what they are discussing will be the Raytheons of the world, will be Leonardos of the world, will be all the companies and the military that kill people discussing further weapons of death to kill more people and more people and more people. When will it stop? It has to stop now, and we have to bear witness to that on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday at the SEC. Further, Glasgow City Council, the SNP-led council, that's the political party that I vote for and will continue to vote for. But they have made a massive error here. Susan Aitken and David MacDonald should hang their heads in shame for allowing this cannibal militarism to go ahead. It's a disgrace, and they, Susan Aitken and David MacDonald, should resign for what they have done. And I'll finish off by saying this, and for all of us to say this: shame on them! 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 And not in my name! Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm here to speak on behalf of Dovetails, an organisation of Scottish artists for peace. It's a charity that's been born over this sort of last year or so. We've had some very good responses, a couple of book launches. You can go to our website, Dovetails, as in tales to be told. And it will explain a lot. What we're doing is we're coming together to protest in the strongest possible terms of this disgraceful arms race that seems to be taking off in the 21st century, when we imagined it would be a century of something towards peace. Clearly it isn't. Clearly we've got people going around selling billions of dollars worth of arms, and their wives board aeroplanes saying, "I don't care, do you?" They're both on the same page. Let's not be any misunderstanding about that. Neither of them care. Neither of them give a damn. They're only in it for what they can grab. And they are grabbing. They are grabbing billions and billions. And it's time it stopped. This 21st century held so much promise. And sadly, that promise is dissipating. It's up to us. It's up to the people who actually want peace to claim it for themselves and for this world, because we've got Trump and Kim Jong-un playing Russian roulette with our lives by brandishing their nuclear weapons like a couple of dogs pissing up a tree. It is appalling. So what Dovetails is trying to do, and in fact is doing, is creating an avenue for protest, for dialogue, for debate. I was over visiting some friends in Livingston recently, and I was on the platform waiting for my train back, and happened to get talking to a couple of no voters. And it was quite interesting. And what I realized from that conversation, and it was a really kind of benign conversation, is that without debate we are lost. We cannot simply stamp our feet. We must talk. We must say this is not good enough, and this is why it's not good enough. So Dovetails aims to confront these issues in the strongest possible terms. We've got writers, musicians, paint artists, performers, dance, filmmakers. You don't have to be an artist to join this organization. It's only important that you have one vital thing going on for you, that you are still alive. And that will make such a difference to everyone else's life. Join this organization. It doesn't cost much. It's a tenner or 15 quid or whatever it is. It's not much. What's that? A couple of beers, a plate of chips at Spoons. It's not too much. So I won't be, this microphone is like, it's fun. I urge everyone to come up here and have a go at this mic. Just so that our aims, of course, are to oppose arms trades and weapons of all kinds, to challenge the place of war in our society and in our philosophy. It's almost getting to the point where we think it's almost okay, we'll have a just war. I've heard that phrase of late. How can you have a just war? How can you take a gun and literally kill someone and justify that? It's not doable. It's just not doable. So we aim to build perhaps a better understanding through healing. Art is an incredibly healing phenomena. You look at a painting, you immediately have a reaction. Mostly it's of wonder. I remember standing outside, standing opposite a Jackson Pollock painting in Manchester in the Tate, I couldn't move. I was there for about 10 minutes. I think my missus had to literally come and get me. I was so affected by this piece. Art affects our lives, affects our spirits, affects our beings and our thoughts. So, you know, there are so many things here. Basically, what we're into peace. If you wish to come and join us, please go to the website, have a look at least. Some of my photographs are on there, and we have a book out. You can order the book. There's some excellent writing in it. So please give it go and have a look at the website, give it a few minutes, and thank you for your time this morning. Thank you.
It's the same sort of companies like Babcock and BAE who will be big players in the replacement of Trident. They are not welcome here. We've all heard the arguments that there are jobs relying on the arms trade in the yards and in Trident. We've also heard all the big promises of orders coming to the Clyde yards, and they never quite fulfil the whole promise. We also all know that the arms trade delegates will be filling hotel rooms and booking restaurant tables, all on expense accounts. They'll expect to be weighted in hand and foot by ordinary working men and women on 0 hours contracts for a minimum wage, probably having their tips, if they get any, skimmed off by their own bosses. So what is the benefit to the people of Glasgow UDT 2018? Promises of well-paid engineering jobs sometime in the future, until they admit that they'll be outsourced or subcontracted. And in the here and now, 0 hour contract, low-paid hospitality jobs, filling the glasses of arm dealers and salesmen who would make Arthur Daly seem wholesome. It's a travesty that City Council have touted the city for this conference, and it's as big a travesty that it's an SNP-controlled council that have let this proceed while vital services are being cut across the city. This is the same party that has claimed to oppose Trident for years. Defence spending can be diverted to fund schools, teachers, health service and hospitals, house building and an effective social security system. Environmentally sound renewable energy turbines and jackets can be built at the warship yards. Recent studies have estimated that to renew the ageing West Coast ferry fleet would create 10 times the number of good skilled jobs that the 3 billion aircraft carriers created. New ferries that would meet the green targets for fuel efficiency and provide reliable transport links to the islands and for the people of Scotland and tourists alike. We need to move away from production for destruction and ditch the arms trade and all its corrupt, poisonous hangers-on. We need to send a clear message that the warmongers are not welcome in Glasgow, and we all need to be at the SCC on Tuesday. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask Eric Chester from the Scottish Peace Network to say a few words.
Yeah, I wanted to stress how much this is part of a system. We live in a society in which working class people feel so desperate to find jobs that the city council can make the argument that bringing in the arms makers will create jobs. What does that say about this kind of system? Instead of living in a system in which puts a priority on housing, healthcare, education, we live in a system where there are not enough jobs, people are desperate for anything, and they're willing to accept that kind of argument. We should say we need a new kind of society where everybody will have a job and there'll be productive jobs. Jobs for things that we actually need, producing things we actually need, like housing, healthcare, education, mass transit. A very different kind of society. So I think we need to keep that in mind. It isn't just an accident, it's not a mistake, it's the logic of the system, and we need a very different kind of system. One final point is I think we need to stop supporting political parties that are locked into that system. It's not a surprise that an SNP-dominated city council would take a completely pro-business stance, because it's a pro-business party. They actually make no secret about that. They say that very clearly they're a pro-business party, and the logic of being a pro-business party is exactly what they did. Anybody's welcome, including the arms makers, because they create jobs. That's the logic of the system. And the Labour Party is no better in that kind of way. They've not really fought against Trident. The SNP says it's against Trident, then brings in the Trident munitions makers. That doesn't make any sense. Obviously, they're not against Trident. So we should stop supporting those kinds of parties. Those kinds of parties support the same kind of corporate interests that lead to the arms fair. Finally, I just want to reiterate the point that a couple speakers made. The only way you're going to begin to create a new situation is through mass action. It's not going to be primarily through elections. It's going to be by being on the streets, willing to take action. So I hope everybody's there on Tuesday, and then we can go from there to more actions. The coalition that came around the arms fair, we need to stay together to build more actions, to build a movement that can really resist what's going on.
I'm going to just ask Brian Quayle from Trident Ploughshares to say a few words.
Thank you, Arthur. On Wednesday, myself and some 50 others chained ourselves to the railings at Parliament. We did so as a protest against the British government's blank refusal to recognise the international treaty banning nuclear weapons agreed in New York on the 7th of July last year. They simply ignored it. On the train going down, I remember thinking to myself, many decades ago, Bertrand Russell and Albert Einstein, two of the finest minds of this century, wrote a petition begging the world to stop preparing for nuclear war. They were ignored. And I'm thinking, here I am on this train, going down to London to a demonstration in London, and I'm going to stop it. No, this is negative thinking, which I shouldn't really be standing here, because no one should stand here unless they radiate hope and courage. And right now, I don't feel much hope, because we live in a grim world. We have a buffoon, a dangerous buffoon in America. We have Margaret Thatcher Mark II in Westminster, and God knows what's happening in the rest of the world. So I don't feel much hope. But I can only say this. Hope is what is left when everything is gone, including hope. So we will go on. We will always go on. And we will resist the gathering swine's drive to universal death, which this arms fair represents. It is the epitome of madness and inhumanity. We must stop it, and the less hopeful the situation we live in, the more we must hope and the more we must act. And I am sick of weaving daffodils into fences and holding silent vigils and doing all these nice, pleasant, peaceful things. I'm not arguing against peaceful, but that time has come for direct action. Peaceful, non-violent, but coordinated and determined mass action. Because either we have a future without nuclear weapons, or we have no future at all. Thank you. See you on Tuesday.
Scotland has a humanitarian charity that is over 500 years old. It is called the Common Good Fund. And Glasgow City Council are responsible for a number of common good funds, which they have amalgamated into a single fund and passed to Glasgow Life for the management of that fund. Now, this is a humanitarian charity. That charity in a borough like Renfrew sponsors community projects and community groups, but in Glasgow it's classified as a hospitality fund. That hospitality fund is buying alcohol and transport for the dignitaries that are visiting the city. Now, this will include the dignitaries that are visiting the arms fair. So therefore we're using a 500-year-old charity to promote death and destruction across the world. The common good is there to preserve life, not take lives. It's up to every individual to write to their local elected representative and ask them for accountability of how much of their fund is being used to promote arms sales. Now, Glasgow City Council tries to deny that there is even this fund exists. So what they have actually said in this instance is common good funds are not being used to promote arms sales. So at least there they have accepted that the fund actually exists. Scottish legislation dictates that the managers of these funds must hold accounts. What we want to see is how much of our money that was meant to be used to save lives has been spent to promote this arms fair. Thank you.
The people of Scotland have made it clear many times that they abhor these nuclear weapons being sited here or anywhere. Glasgow is a member of the Nuclear Free Local Authorities Group, and we have a council led by SNP members whose party have as their policy against nuclear weapons. The SNP's own web says it's wrong strategically, morally and financially. And the people of Glasgow have shown by their votes that they're against Trident and its replacement. Scottish CND have been told that a recruitment session led by the officials involved in the Trident replacement work takes place on the second day of this conference. The organisers need to know that a substantial number of political and there is a substantial amount of political and public opposition to Trident replacement in Scotland. And any event which tries to promote the disastrous idea of spending billions on Trident replacement is not welcome in Glasgow or anywhere in Scotland. We do understand that the event will bring money, but we do not find that justified. But it means supporting something that is morally wrong and against the wishes of the Scottish people. Thank you.